Hi, this is Junrel Omakasa, and for today's discussion, we are going to discuss the atmospheric circulation and weather and climatic changes. And as we go beyond our discussion, I know and I sincerely believe that we already encounter the terminologies that we will encounter as we go beyond to our topic. So I will no longer discuss it further because I know that it is only to refresh our mind and to review the past lessons. So without further ado, let us now start. So by the way, what is atmosphere? Atmosphere, it is a layer of gases that envelop a planet and is held in a place by gravity of the planetary body. Layers of gases surrounding our planet. Look at the illustration. So the atmospheric circulation is the large-scale movement of the air currents. So it leads to the redistribution of the thermal energy on the surface of the earth. So thermal energy, which refers to the release of the emission of heat. So it is consistent pattern of airflow around the planet's atmosphere. So it is essential part of Earth's climate system because it redistributes heat around the planet. So as we moved on, so these large-scale wind circulations move in response to differences in temperature at the equator, the warmer region of the planet, and the poles, which is the coldest region. They carry heat from tropical regions to the polar regions to keep them inhabitable. They prevent areas around the equator from becoming hotter and polar regions from becoming colder. That is the number one rule of our atmosphere and also the atmospheric circulation. So let us think that if without atmospheric circulation, weather on our planet would stop. Clouds would not form as there would be no air flowing over oceans to collect moisture. Over time, plants and animals would begin to die from the lack of water. And these statements or this paragraph is really clear, it's very clear. And I will no longer discuss it, I will expand it. So what causes atmospheric circulation? Maybe that is the question. So then this is caused by two major forces known as the solar radiation and the spin of the earth. Solar radiation refers to the sunlight, the energy, the heat energy produced by the sun, and the spin of the earth, the rotation of the earth. So the reason why we have different weather patterns, jet streams, deserts, and prevailing winds is all because of the global atmospheric circulation caused by the rotation of the earth and the amount of heat different parts of the globe receive. So also, if we were asked wind are essential to atmosphere circulation. Aside from winds that occur temporarily, the general circulation of the atmosphere involves surface winds that blow regularly. Winds carries the hot air, the warm air, so from the one region to another region. Atmospheric circulation, its organization. Remember, the only driver of atmospheric circulation is sunlight. Under the constraints of gravity, Archimedes' thrust and Coriolis force due to the Earth's rotation. Temperature differences between the equator and the poles cause air to circulate all around the Earth. So it is talks about the sunlight as the primary source of energy, which is the sun as the primary source of energy that produces sunlight that heat the land masses and the oceans of the surface of the earth. So Earth's three primary atmospheric circulation cells. Since we are talking about as atmospheric circulation, it has three primary atmospheric circulation cells. One, Hadley cell, two, Ferrel cell, three, the polar cell. And why does the Earth have three atmospheric circulation cells? It is because it is the result of Coriolis effect. As its air moves towards the equator, the rotation of the Earth causes it to curve to the west. This slows its progression toward the equator and the air warms, rises, and heat away from the equator. This causes air to circulate with a circular pattern. This prevents a total transfer from the equator to the poles and back. The air movements creates three zones of circulation called the Hadley cell, Ferrel cell, and polar cell. So it is very clear. The Hadley cell and polar cell are both called thermal cells. Why? It is formed due to insolation of sun. When the sun when the sun radiates, or the solar radiation coming from the sun hits the surface of the equator area, so that is why the Hadley cell and the polar cell has become the thermal. They have the mostly the same movement of the air. Then Ferrel cell is mechanical cell that forms due to void being created by these thermal cells. The Ferrel cell is between the polar cell and the Hadley cell. Look at the illustration as it is very clear, the arrow there, the movement of the air current. So Hadley cell got the name from George Hadley in 1685 to 1768. It is the atmospheric circulation cell closest to the equator. The Hadley cell is the atmospheric circulation cell closest to the equator. It forms when hot air rises at the equator and cools and sinks toward the ground at 30 degrees north and south. With the Earth's spin, the winds are deflected to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere. Ships rely on these trade winds to navigate around the world. Okay. The Ferrel cell, on the other hand, get the name from William Ferrel. Occurs at higher latitudes, between 30 degrees to 60 degrees north and 30 degrees to 60 degrees south. The wind that travels within the cell carry warm air from the tropics toward the cold air drifting down from the polar regions. Most of the air that circulates here is heavy in moisture and creates unstable weather conditions associated with the mid-latitude depression. As the air in the Ferrel cell is pulled towards the poles, it forms the southwesterly winds in the northern hemisphere and the northwesterly winds in the southern hemisphere. So, parang kabalitaran siya. So, polar cell, on the other hand, lies between 50 degrees to 60 degrees north and 50 degrees to 60 degrees south. The winds that travel within this cell flow from east to west and earning them the nickname polar easterlies. In this region, cold polar air mixes with the warmer tropical air and creates a zone of low pressure called subpolar low. So how atmospheric circulation works? Listen carefully, this is very important. How atmospheric circulation works. Energy from the sun passes through our atmosphere and gets absorbed by the land masses and oceans of our planet. This causes the surface temperatures of land and water to rise, which in turn creates masses of hot air and form above them. But because the earth is tilted, curved, and covered with snow and ice in some areas, various parts of the world heat up at different temperatures. The resulting temperature differences create a phenomenon known as convection, where cooler air from higher up in the atmosphere sinks because it is denser and gets replaced by the rising warm air. So convection happens in every region of the planet, but it is mostly driven by air circulation patterns at the equator, which is the hottest region of the earth. So the equator is the hottest region of the earth, and the poles are the coldest region of the earth. So this cause is known as the Coriolis effect. The Coriolis effect makes the atmospheric circulation dynamic. So let us proceed. We are now done in atmospheric circulation. So let us proceed to weather and climatic changes. By the way, the difference between the weather and the climate. Weather, condition of the atmosphere of a place at a particular time. It is also a temporary behavior of atmosphere, small geographic area, and can change rapidly. Weather can change at time to time. Ngayong araw, umuulan, tapos pagka ilang oras, biglang uminit. So that is the weather. The climate, on the other hand, is the overall weather conditions in a particular place of the year. A long-term weather condition or phenomena at a certain place, very slow to change. So that is the difference between the climate and the weather. On the other hand, the similarities of weather and climate is number one, it has a precipitation, temperature, humidity, wind, pressure. So, how do we describe a weather? Take note that weather it can be described as in three ways. It is maybe it is fine weather characterized by few clouds, bright sunny day or clear night, and no rain. That is fine weather. Fair weather, characterized by the presence of different amounts of clouds, bright and sunny periods, and rain of short duration in some areas. Stormy weather, on the other hand, is characterized by the presence of dark clouds, strong winds, and rain in most areas. So, definitions. Meteorology is the study of weather. Meteorologist, someone who studies weather. Climatology is study of climate. Climatologist, someone who studies climate. And climate change, according to the definition from the United Nations, climate change refers to the long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. These shifts may be natural, but since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas, which produces heat-trapping gases. On the other hand, precipitation, it is water released from clouds in the form of rain, freezing rain, sleet, snow, or hail. So, Intertropical Convergence Zone or ITCZ, basically low pressure belt encircling Earth near the equator. It is a zone of convergence where the trade winds meet. So, effects on human activities on weather and climate. One, we are burning fossil fuels, cutting down forests, farming, livestock are increasingly influencing the climate and Earth's temperature, noise making, quarrying, sand winning, bush burning, open defecation, and among others. Ways humans impact the environment. Number one, overpopulation. Two, pollution, global warming, climate change, genetic modification, ocean acidification, water pollution, deforestation. But take note also that there are also causes the Earth's climate to change. It is both made by humans or else natural. These have been caused also by many natural factors like changes in the sun, emissions from volcanoes, variations in the Earth's orbit. So, main effects of climate change. So, the effects of climate change are more frequent and intense drought, storms, heat waves, rising sea levels, melting glaciers, warming oceans, and among others. And these directly harm animals, destroy the places they live, and wreak havoc on people's livelihood and communities. What can we do to limit the effects of change? One, use active modes of transport. Use active modes of transport like instead of um, riding motorcycles or jeeps. So you can walk if it is just near to in your house. You can walk or just use cycling so that we can reduce the pollution or the air pollution and the release of air pollution rather. So switch to renewable energy sources like solars, wind, and geothermal energy. Use the renewable energy sources and consume food from a sustainable source. Okay, so I think it is very needed. I think it is very essential that we have to start it in our own because we are the steward on earth, right? So we have to take care of our environment. So again, and we have to check our understanding. I have prepared the 30 questions and I will read one by one. What is atmospheric circulation? I know I discussed it earlier, I talked earlier. What makes the atmospheric air circulate? What is the warmest region of the earth? What is the coldest region of the earth? Why we have different weather patterns, jet streams, deserts, etc.? And what do you think is the role of the wind? What are the three primary atmospheric circulation cells? What do you think might happen if there would be no atmosphere circulation? Why there are three primary atmospheric circulation cells? What is Hadley cell? What is Ferrel cell? What is polar cell? What are the two thermal cells? What do you think is the importance of atmospheric circulation? What is weather? What is climate? And what is climate change? What is your own thoughts about weather and climate without consulting to Google and dictionary? It is your own idea, it is your own interpretation. Can you give me the similarities of the two? Does the effect of weather can take lives or does it affect how we live? Why? What is fine weather? What is fair weather? What is stormy weather? Or the study of weather is known as, the study of climate is known as, what is precipitation? Give me reasons, or as long as you can, on why we suffer climate change. In your own idea, how atmospheric circulation contributes or affects the weather and climate. And then, suggest some alternative solutions on how to limit the effects of climatic change. What is the difference between weather and climate? Who do you think to be blamed or will be blamed why we suffer climate change? Just share your learnings. Uh, just share your learnings and ideas. Sorry, it lacks the U, it lacks the R letter. So that is, as a steward, we have to take care of our environment and we have to be aware about the situation that we encounter today, especially the atmospheric circulation, the happenings, the changes of our climate, and how it impact to our life and day-to-day life. So that is, I think that is all. Thank you so much and God bless.